Hey there guys, and welcome to this video on static methods in Python 3. In this session, we're going to look at the difference between a regular instance method and then compare that to a static method here. Now, I get a lot of questions asking people why you would use these and what's the difference between these and these. So hopefully in this video, we'll try and distill that and we'll do an example of each to try and show the difference. We've got a basic car class, which effectively just takes in one argument, model, and it defines that here. So we're saying self.model is equal to whatever we pass in. So in this case, this variable Mustang has a model attribute, which is equal to Mustang, the string here. Also inside this init method, we've got a created on attribute, which for the time being, I've just hard-coded as Monday, which is a bit vague, I know. But we're going to be using this later on in our static method. So I've just put this here for now as a bit of a placeholder. And then inside our class, we have a instance method called showModel. We know this is an instance method because we have self. Anything that has self always refers back to the instance here. So in this case, whenever Mustang calls showModel, so if I do Mustang.showModel here, what's happening is effectively Mustang, the variable, is being passed in as self automatically. So just replace self with Mustang. So when this prints, it's basically going to say this car is a Mustang.model, and therefore that's going to go to this, look at this model attribute, and going to print this off here. So if we hit run, we get that. There we go. So this is your vanilla basic instance method. Instance methods, generally, they have access to the attributes of an instance. So generally just look for the word self. If it's got the word self in there, it's probably an instance method. So this is a really simple example here. And I've done this just so that when I do the static method, we can kind of compare and contrast the difference here. Now for our static method, I want to kind of do it a bit of a different way. Rather than just explaining it in one go, I'm going to kind of try and half explain it and then build the example at the same time here. So generally, static methods, these are methods which don't have access to any of the attributes of an instance. So what I mean by that is, this one here, this has self passed in, which means it has access to things like Mustang.model, Mustang.createdOn. This, in theory, could access those if it wanted to. A static method couldn't. So generally what you use it for, if you want to kind of bunch a load of things together into a class, so say you want to do a little bit of, some computations, a couple of calculations, format a string, but you want to put it into like a little function that can just work off on one side, that could quite easily be a static method. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to effectively use this and create a nice static method. So what I'm going to do, rather than saying self.created on Monday, I'm going to build a method which does the current date and time and assigns it to this here. So what I've done, I've imported datetime here, and I'm going to create a really simple static method. So the first thing I'm going to do is do @static method to assign the decorator. I'm then going to do def, let's do create date str, so create date string. And then if I run this here, notice how there's no self, because it doesn't need it. It doesn't need to access any of self's attributes. And what I'm going to do is create a simple string which just reflects the current date and time. So I'm going to do that in 2 bits. I'm going to do now is equal to datetime.now. If I just return that, I'll just show what it looks like. And what I'm going to do is actually pass it here. So if I do self.createDateStr, we still have to do self.here here because this effectively, this still belongs to the instance, but it just doesn't access any of its attributes. So if I just did this, this is going to crash because it's going to think that this is just a vanilla function, like somewhere above here, but it's not. It belongs to the class still. So I want to do self.this here. So if I just run that and see what happens, let's get rid of this. And then just go ahead and do print Mustang. Let's see, Mustang dot, and let's do created on. Let's hit run. There we go. So not very sightly, I know. But effectively what's happening here is we're saying whenever a car is set up, take the model from here. That's fine, that's Mustang. However, this created on attribute is going to be whatever this static method returns. In this case, whenever this method is called, it's just saying grab whatever the time is now and return that. So if I stick these together, can you see the difference? This is accessing self, so this is accessing things about this variable, things about Mustang, but this doesn't need to. It doesn't need to access the model. There's no point in doing it. So because of that, I can make it a static method because this is simply saying get the current time, return it. We can make this a little better. Like this isn't very sightly. What we could do is we could use the strf time method to just return this as a string. So to do that, I'm going to do datetime dot strf time, and this is a little method which basically says, given a datetime object and a format, return the datetime object in this format. And this can be a bit of a pain to type out, so I'm going to steal this here. And what I'm going to do is pass in the datetime object. So now do a comma and then pass this little thing here. So basically saying, give me back this, but in this format here. So it should look the same, but just for about the milliseconds at the end. So if I hit run now, there we go. And if I run the type function over that, you see that this is now a string. And there we go. So let's just quickly go back over that and discuss why this is important. So if I hit clear, let's just make some space here. So let's compare these two. There's no mention of self in this, but there is mention of self in this. That's because the instance method needs to access information about the instance, in this case, its model. This one doesn't have self because it doesn't need to know anything about the instance. It's simply saying, go and look at the time now, and then return that time as a string, and that's it. So because of that, that can be a static method because it doesn't need to access anything. Theoretically, you could do this as an instance method, but I think it's much better in practice to make it a static method because you're telling other programmers if someone else is using this code, that this method doesn't access anything about the instance. It's simply getting the time and returning it here. So to finish off with formal definition, let's write that up here. So we can say these do not have access to instance attributes, or we can say info here. So really, I think that's the biggest difference. It's in terms of what they can access. So of course, things like class methods, they can access information about the class in general. Your instance methods, they access information about specific instances. Static methods don't access the class or the instance. These are just vanilla functions that happen to sort of live inside the class and do not access any of the information about instances. And that's the difference. Of course, if you find this useful, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day and cheers.